what are our priorities in Canada? What are we looking at doing? Okay, Canada sees a lot of potential in emerging economies. Emerging economies are those economies that are growing rapidly, improving the standard of living across the entire country, and are gaining more global prominence. Okay, there's a lot of potential in those countries. So Canada is actively trying to figure out what those countries are and encouraging businesses to start to create those linkages such that we can grow and sell into those economies as they develop. Okay. Technology has changed everything. Technology has changed everything. I can, off the side of my desk, start a company, create a website, pay $20 a month of somebody answer my phone, a real person answer my phone and say, hey, Mark's company, and have the ability to sell well beyond Canada and the ability to appear like I'm a much bigger company. That's pretty cool. What's the downside? The downside is other people can do that to me. Okay. But as a Canadian in a small market, yeah, I'm probably willing to take that chance. Okay. Let's look at eBay. I have a piece of camera equipment I want to sell. How would I have sold that in the past? Well, I might have driven to Vancouver, put it in a consignment store, and waited for somebody who goes in and sees it and buys it, and I would have given my commission to the consignment store, and it would have taken months, and eventually I would have got my money. Or I can put it on eBay. I can have it sold in 10 days. I can reach a market of people that I never ever would have otherwise found, and they can find a product that they may be looking for, and I can get paid in 12 days, and probably for more than what I would have got paid if there was only a smaller group of people who might be interested in it. Okay, there's lots of ways technology has changed business. Again, back to the government. There's a Global Markets Action Plan where the government is trying to help business figure out how to trade with other countries. They've identified 21 countries that we are interested in trading with. And China and India are of particularly interest trade to Canada. Why is there a little sad face on my slide? Where the heck did that come from? Shouldn't it be a sad face? That should be a happy face. That's interesting. China and India are awesome countries. China and India are going to be, one or both are going to be dominant economic countries in and throughout the rest of your careers. Each has their own problems, and if they can solve them, they will be economic superpowers. Okay? China and India will be major players, one or both of them will be major players throughout your careers. Okay? Mark my words. I'm pretty sure I'm right on this one. Okay? And I'm a big fan of behavioral economics as well as population economics and demographics, or economic demographics is probably the best way to put it. And the demographics of China and India are particularly interesting. Okay? And that is what is going to make them potentially economic superpowers in your careers. Okay, there are some hurdles they need to get over. They're different hurdles for each country, but when they do, look out. Okay, look out, because it's going to be pretty impressive. So, things to follow throughout your careers: always, always, always follow what's going on in China and India. Okay. So, what are some strategies for reaching these global markets? Okay. If we look on a scale in terms of commitment, risk, profit potential, okay, one of the things that we know is that if there is increased risk, we want to increase profit. So licensing. Licensing has the least amount of commitment, risk, and profit. Basically, you get a license to sell somebody's product or to make and sell somebody's product. Or you give a license to somebody in another country to make and sell your product. Right? It doesn't cost you much. Exporting. A little riskier, because now you're making a product and you've got to get it to the country and have somebody else sell it. Okay, a little riskier because you've got capital tied up in your product. Franchising, i.e., you can open a Subway in Ho Chi Minh City. Okay. A little more risk because your name's on it front and center. And if it goes bad, everybody knows. Contract manufacturing, again, a little riskier because now I'm hiring somebody in another country to make my product there. Contract manufacturing happens a lot. Okay, I've been consulting with a company for years that is contract manufacturing in China. Over the last 10 years, we are on our third, looking for our fourth contract manufacturer. That is a lot to change in 4 years. Joint ventures and strategic alliances. This is where we partner, legally partner with another company in another country. Okay, we did this as well with this company. We legally partnered with them and then hired a contract manufacturer based on their recommendation. Didn't work out so well. Went to another one. And then they offered to buy us out. And they said, the company's worth this much. And I went, okay, write a check. And they're like, then they're like, maybe it's not worth that much. Maybe it's worth less. Okay, write us a check. Nah, maybe it's not worth that much. Maybe it's worth less. Okay, write us a check. So we went through this for a little while, knowing full well they did not want to buy us out. Eventually, they came down to a point and said, well, it's worth this much. We're like, okay, write us a check. They're like, no, we don't want to buy you out. We want you to buy us out at that price. We're like, no. So we negotiated that down to half again and eventually bought them out. So the company is solely owned now with the Canadian owners. And we have a new contract manufacturer and all new products coming in. And then lastly, foreign direct investment. That's where I invest my money in the foreign country. And that has a lot of risk. But again, my money, I become the owner in that business, in that country. So, what are some of the biggest companies in the world? Certainly Walmart, $482 million in revenue in June of 2017. This clearly has gone up. Bunch of Chinese companies: State Grid, China National Petroleum, Sinopec Group, Royal Dutch Shell from the Netherlands, ExxonMobil, Volkswagen, Toyota, Apple, BP. One of the interesting things that jumps out at me about this list is what? how many gas companies there are. China National Petroleum, Sinopec, Royal Dutch, Exxon, BP, British Petroleum, that's half of the companies on this list are oil and gas companies. The thing about the oil and gas industry is the actual profit margins are relatively small, but the volume is huge. Okay. So these are, again, based on volume revenue numbers. So here's some links you can click through. To look at different types of companies. So what are some of the things that are affecting trade in global markets? Social forces, sociocultural forces, culture and ethnocentricity. Here's the thing. Culture has a big impact, particularly around things like food items. Okay. Kamloops has a large international student population. So you know what we've seen over the 10 years I've been in Kamloops? We have seen the development in the grocery stores of international food aisles. Right? We have students from Asia, so we see in major grocery stores like Superstore and Save-On, we've seen international food aisles that are trying to bring in foods that appeal to people who aren't Canadian. That's great. We've also seen a change in restaurants in Kamloops, which is wonderful. Get some diversity in our restaurants. Ethnocentricity is another issue that has definitely come up. Here is a great example. The U.S. used to export rice to Japan. The exact same rice that the Japanese eat. They went to Japan and they got the exact same genetic strains that Japanese people eat. They grew it in the U.S., they shipped it back to Japan, and it all went bad. Why? It was the exact same rice and selling for a little over half the price. Why did it go bad? It went bad because of ethnocentricity. It was believed that, oh, American rice, it's not as good as Japanese. It happens. I personally happen to believe Canada is the greatest country in the world. I would rather buy Canadian than other countries' products if they're around the same price. I will pay a premium for a Canadian product up to 15%, maybe 20%, because I believe it helps Canada and there are ramifications that help Canada. That's ethnocentricity. I'm willing to buy local and pay 10-15% more to buy local. Okay. You know, if the fruit comes from around Kamloops, I would rather buy that than fruit that comes from Niagara. Okay. That is regional centricity, basically the same as ethnocentricity. When Trump got elected, there were all kinds of people who stopped buying fruit from the United States. Okay. It can have an impact. We need to be aware of that. And it may be something we can't get over. The Americans were never successful at selling rice in Japan. What else? Economic and financial forces. The exchange rate, yes. When the Canadian dollar is worth less, Americans come to Canada and spend their money here. When the Canadian dollar is more, Canadians will go to the United States and spend money. it has an impact. What else? Legal forces. Different countries have different legal systems, have different laws. We need to be aware of them and to operate within them. That can affect how we do business. Okay. When I started one of my Canadian companies, we incorporated our U.S. subsidiary in Delaware. Why? Because Delaware has very favorable tax conditions. So any money we made in the United States went through Delaware that had very favorable tax conditions. Nice. Okay. My son just told me the other day he read that there's this one building in Delaware that is the home of 200,000 corporate entities. And he thought that was shocking. I was like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I had a company that had an office in Delaware. And physical and environmental forces can have an effect. Hurricanes, weather, getting your product into a country. If you're selling your product to a landlocked country, how do you get it there? Things like that. So they all have an impact on where we can do business. One of the things that is always very amusing is language issues. So here are some examples of companies that took their English slogans and translated them into local languages. It's called localization when you translate something into another language from your own. And some of these are kind of funny. So Pepsi had a slogan that was, "Come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation." When you translated it into Chinese, it translated as, "Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the dead." Kentucky Fried Chicken has had a slogan forever that's "Finger licking good." And in Japanese, the translation was "Bite your fingers off." Coors' Turn It Loose campaign, when it was translated into Spanish, was translated as "Suffer from diarrhea." Drink Coors, suffer from diarrhea. Anybody who's drunk too much Coors knows that that is probably true. What else? Electrolux, a Scandinavian vacuum manufacturer, when they translated their slogan into English, it came to "Nothing sucks like an Electrolux." And I had a student whose father actually worked for Electrolux at the time, and he said they knew what they were doing there. So that one was done on purpose. And why? Buzz marketing. Okay, nothing sucks like an Electrolux. Well, people start talking about that every time they say Electrolux. It is their name getting out there. Okay, so that one was apparently done on purpose. So let us look at countries that are corrupt. This was again from 2017. Highly corrupt business practices. Somalia, South Sudan, North Korea, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, Libya, Afghanistan, Venezuela, Iraq. Canada is 165th on the list, and last is Denmark. Okay. Doing business in corrupt countries is possible, but not easy. And it will definitely test your ethics, your personal ethics as well as your corporate ethics. There is a place you can go to get the current list. So, trade protectionism. This is the government trying to protect their own country's industries. earlier when I said, Trump gets mad at Canada and puts a tariff on our softwood lumber, which is something many presidents have done in the past, that is the Americans trying to protect their industries. It happens all the time. Canada does it. European countries do it. Asian countries do it. It happens all the time. Okay. What are some of the things that we can do, or that governments have done or companies have done? One is dumping. Dumping is selling our products in another country for less than we're selling them for on our own. Okay, we're just getting rid of them. We're dumping them. A tariff, that's a tax imposed on our imports. Okay, a tariff on softwood lumber. A tariff on dairy products. Quotas. A quota is a limit. You're only allowed to bring so much. That's another thing that we can do. We can say, hey, we're not going to put a tariff on, but you're only allowed to bring 10 into Canada. But we've been selling 200. Yep, you're down to 10 now. An embargo is a complete ban on the import or export of certain products, stopping all of trade with a particular country. This happened. Most famous embargo is the United States and Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, way back in the day, Cuba was forbidden from trading with the United States. The United States would not trade with Cuba. Now they can trade a little bit, but that's recent history. They went through 50 plus years of not being able to trade with the United States. Do you know who Cuba traded with? Canada. Cubans love Canadians. Why? Because we traded with them when the Americans won it. If you've ever been to Cuba, every major resort in Cuba was built with money that went through Canada. They love Canadians. Canadians kept the Cuban tourist industry afloat. Okay. Why? There was an embargo with the United States. So, a couple things you need to know about with regards to trade. GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, was an agreement established after World War II that basically countries decided that we will reduce the restrictions on trade. Why would we want to reduce the restrictions on trade? For all the things we're talking about today. It is in our best interest. It is in everybody's best interest to have freer trade. We also have the WTO, which is a World Trade Organization, and that became a more active organization as opposed to GATT, which was basically an agreement. WTO was organized to basically mediate disputes. Okay, so if two countries can't solve their trade dispute, then they will go to the World Trade Organization and they will help mediate a response. What else? The IMF, the International Monetary Fund. It is a organization that wealthy countries contribute to, and the money is used as short-term loans to help countries experiencing problems with their balance of trade. Okay, some countries need a little help, little short-term help, kind of like if you've ever gone to your parents and asked for $100 and say, hey, I'm a little short on rent this month. Can I borrow $100? Unlike your parents, or possibly unlike your parents, the IMF actually wants their money back. Not a lot of forgiveness going on at the IMF. And the World Bank is a bank that, again, takes money or uses money from the wealthier nations and lends it on a longer term basis to less developed countries to help develop their infrastructure so they can help develop their trade. Cartels. We've all heard of cartels. Most of us have heard of cartels from watching movies about drugs, but there are all kinds of cartels. One of the most non-famous or famous non-drug cartels is OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. The idea behind a cartel is that they want to regulate prices and optimize their profits over the long haul. Okay, so they want to regulate prices and optimize their profits over the long term. Okay, so in essence, they are anti-free trade to a large degree, right? So by controlling prices, they're doing good things for them, but they are not doing the best for everybody else and the consumers. Okay, and in the OPEC countries, the oil-producing countries, sometimes you get a renegade. Okay, and oil prices will fluctuate based on resource availability, right? So that's essentially how they control prices, is they either produce more or produce less oil, and that will cause a shift in prices. Okay, one of the difficulties we have, one of the difficulties we saw with COVID, is travel stopped. Travel literally stopped. Okay, at times in COVID, apparently the air traffic around the world was back to like pre-World War II levels. Was the last time we saw air traffic that light, except 9/11 when there was no air traffic. So what happened? We had a glut of oil, and that had an impact on oil prices. Travel starting to operate again, shipping starting to pick up, people are starting to use their cars, and the glut of oil is now being used up. Okay, so as oil demand gets back to normalization, we will see OPEC again using supply side to try and control the price. Common markets, trading blocks. Okay, North America Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, the current version of NAFTA that Trump, Trudeau, and the Mexican president signed. Okay, we have a trading block. European Union is a trading block. Canada is currently involved in 11 different trading blocks. I couldn't name them all, but we're involved in a lot. NAFTA is our biggest one because the US is our biggest trading partner. We also have trading blocks with Asia. We have trading blocks with Europe. Okay, in certain goods, they're much more limited in scope than NAFTA very often. There's ASEAN that I mentioned before, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, have a trading bloc. Very shortly, China is going to take over the United States as the world's largest economy. Okay, again, major player. So they are going to have a huge impact on your careers, your entire careers, and India too, if both of those countries figure out how to deal with their current issues. Okay, India has a lot of potential. Why? A very well-educated population. They've seen growth in IT, pharmaceuticals, and biotech in India. Okay, huge market potential in all three of those industries. Russia and Brazil. Okay, both those countries also have their political issues, but they have amazing stores of raw materials. And you will hear this term BRIC nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China. Brazil, Russia, India, China. Okay, remember those countries. They will have an impact. So, outsourcing and offshoring. Okay, That's having our work done in another country, in another place. What are the pros and cons? Well, pros. We can take things that are not strategic to our company and have them done in a less costly place. Awesome. It creates efficiencies, and the money we save can be used to hire people to do things that are more part of our core business or what we consider our strategic advantage. What's the impact? Well, our customers get lower prices because it costs less to produce. It provides well-paying jobs in other countries, increasing the standard of living for those people in those countries and contributing to the economic growth of those countries. What are the downsides? Well, it contributes to the loss of jobs at home. It reduces wages for people who have similar jobs at home because of the threat of moving offshore. It is difficult to manage something so far away, so sometimes quality can suffer. If the quality suffers, then our reputation can suffer. And dealing with people so far away, we can have difficulties with communication. We can have difficulties with management communication with the company. We can have difficulties with communication between our offshore workers and our customers. So there's upsides and downsides. So what do we know? Canada's small population. Big physical country, small population. Absolute and comparative advantage refer to the efficiencies we have in producing goods. Right? Remember, comparative advantage. I make everything at higher cost than you do. Should we trade? Yes. Why? Because comparatively, I make something better than you. And comparatively, you make something better than me. Let's trade those things. Okay? Imports and exports, that's what happens when we trade. I import something, I bring it into my country, you export it, you send it to me from your country. Some of the ways we can reach global markets include exporting, licensing, franchising, contract manufacturing, joint ventures, strategic alliances, and foreign direct investments. If there's greater risk, we expect greater reward. There is not much risk in licensing. There is a big risk in foreign direct investment. So we expect the reward from foreign direct investment to be greater than the reward from licensing. Some of the things that affect our ability to deal in global markets: sociocultural effects, ethnocentricity, cultural preference, taste preference, the legal environment in different places, the economic environment in different places, the ability to get capital, physical and environmental factors. Are you dealing with a company in a hurricane zone or an earthquake zone or a landlocked country? They can all have an impact. Countries will, at times, use protectionist mechanisms. Tariffs, import quotas, embargoes. The embargo of Cuba was not to protect their country or their industry. It was a political embargo. It was to force an ideology, but it was still an embargo. Things are changing, and technology will continue to have a huge influence. Countries to look out for: the BRIC countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China. Brazil and Russia because of their vast natural resources. India and China because of their potential economic prowess. Okay. I personally feel India and China are going to be fascinating to watch over your careers. Okay? Those countries are going to have huge, or have the potential to have huge impacts on the world markets as well as your careers as you continue to develop your own careers. That said, ladies, gentlemen, and others, thank you very much for your attention. Remember, this is the second half of the Global Trade Lecture, and